About the giant turnip. There was an old grandpa and grandma, and they had a little granddaughter. They worked on their small piece of land and raised a few domestic animals. Every day, the granddaughter helped her grandparents feed the geese, chickens, and also brought some treats for the dog, who had his bowl in front of the house. The dog wasn't greedy, and he always saved something for the cat. The cat, in turn, would leave a few crumbs by the mouse hole in the attic. The well-fed mouse would then play a chasing game with the cat all night. And so they all lived together in harmony. While the granddaughter was feeding the animals, the grandma worked in the kitchen, and the grandpa took care of the fields. He began his work early in the morning and finished late at night. He sowed, watered, weeded, hoed, and the more he worked, the better the plants grew. He managed to grow a turnip so huge that people came from the neighboring village just to see it. It was enormous, covering half the field, and it kept growing and growing. There was nothing to be done, and Grandpa had to dig it up. His field wasn't really that big after all. However, the hoe broke right away. What to do now? How to get the turnip out? He called for Grandma's help. She grabbed Grandpa around the waist, and he gripped the strong leaves with all his might, but they couldn't pull out the turnip. Grandma called for the granddaughter. "I'd be happy to help. After all, you take care of me." She came running willingly. Although they tried with all their strength, the turnip wouldn't budge. The granddaughter went to fetch the dog. The dog held the granddaughter held Grandma, Grandma held Grandpa, and Grandpa held the turnip. They pulled and pulled, but they still couldn't get the turnip out. "Woof, woof, we can't do it on our own. Kitty, come help us," the dog called the cat. The cat stood in line, grabbed the dog held the granddaughter held Grandma, Grandma held Grandpa, and Grandpa held the turnip. They pulled and pulled, and it seemed like the turnip was giving in a bit, but they still couldn't get it out. "We'll have to give up. We don't have enough strength for such a giant turnip," Grandpa sighed in disappointment. "What about me?" A squeaky voice came from down near the ground. It was a little mouse, coming to help the cat. "You, little mouse? You're so tiny. How could you help?" Grandma didn't believe it. Grandpa just chuckled and didn't believe it either. But the mouse was already in line. She firmly held onto the cat, the dog, the granddaughter, the grandma, the grandpa, and the grandpa the turnip. They pulled and pulled, and suddenly, snap! The turnip was out. A hole remained in the ground from where the turnip had been pulled. It was big enough to fit a carriage with horses inside. As the turnip gave in, they all collapsed in a heap, laughing and laughing. Together, they had succeeded in their task.